Hello and welcome to this month's update on the opinion polls conducted by the Levada Center in Russia. The approval ratings after this summer shallow dip have recovered, which I interpret as a sign that people are not in favor of change. President Putin approval ratings are back to a score of 87 out of 100, and even the government is back to a score of 71 out of 100. Finally, the score for "Is the country moving in the right direction?" question scored 69 out of 100, meaning that overall the respondents feel that the country is being steered in an acceptable way. The recovery in discourse across the board could be linked to the Kursk operation beginning to fade from memory and other concerns taking over, such as rising interest rates and inflation. For example, in focus groups conducted by the Levada Center, when the participants were asked which main events they recalled from the month of October, only about 2% mentioned Kursk. Some also followed the presidential campaign in the United States. The focus group's participants that followed the presidential election were majority male and more likely to rely on mainstream media sources of information and Telegram. The prevailing feeling was that it would be difficult for Russia to resume any kind of relation with the United States under Kamala Harris. In that respect, Donald Trump had a bit of an edge, as the focus group's participants felt that maybe it would be easier to open some kind of dialogue with the US administration under a Trump presidency, as some recalled that there was no war during the first Trump presidency. But overall the feeling is that American presidents talk the talk, but it is the administration that does the walk, and no matter what the president says or wants, ultimately what gets done is what the administration wants. So the people in the focus groups are not very hopeful that anything will change. I think Medvedev sums up the position in this Telegram post. Of course, Medvedev, being Medvedev, puts it in a bit more extreme way than your average Russian. The world is frozen in awkward poses ahead of the presidential elections in the United States. We have no reason for any inflated expectations. First, the elections will not change anything for Russia, since the candidates' position fully reflect the bipartisan consensus on the need for our country to be defeated. 2. Kamala is inexperienced, controllable, and will be afraid of everyone around her. The enclave of the most important ministers and assistants will rule, plus indirectly the Obama family. Third, the tired Trump issuing platitudes like "I will offer a deal" and "I have excellent relations with" will also be forced to comply with all the system rules. He will not be able to stop the war, not in a day, not in 3 days, not in 3 months. And if he really tries, he could become the new JFK. Only one thing matters: how much money the new President of the United States will knock out for someone else's distant war, for their military-industrial complex, and for the Bandera scam to carve up. 5. Therefore, the best way to make November 5th pleasant for the candidates for the highest American post is to continue to smash the Kiev Nazi regime. Ouch! What interests me is that respondents' position is at least partly based on the mainstream media rhetoric, which is generally sanctioned by the Kremlin. So let's do a bit of a leap here. I would suggest that the Kremlin thought that another Trump presidency was likely. Russia is not unique in this. The EU also took steps to ring-fence some policies concerning the Ukraine especially, ahead of a Trump's presidency, and the new Secretary General of NATO was chosen on the assumption that Trump might be back in the White House. Mark Rutte apparently is known for his skills in working with somewhat difficult people and managing to successfully bring them to the table. It seems that the only European country that didn't get the memo was the United Kingdom and most of the mainstream media. I'm a bit miffed about this. because all the red flags were there, and yet I chose to believe what the middle ground mainstream media were telling me rather than looking at what was really there. The hot topics were food and energy inflation and immigration, and the background was a growing dissatisfaction with the post-war dominant political ideology of liberal internationalism. This suggests that a number of voters were looking for an alternative, giving Trump, as the candidate of change, an edge against Kamala Harris, the candidate of continuity. Then there is the whole Biden kerfuffle. President Biden indicated that he would not run for a second term in 2019. Then, in 2023, he was going to run. Then, he could not. And Kamala Harris was put forward as the candidate for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party decided not to run primary elections. It makes sense vice presidents take over when the president is not well, and later often run as the party candidate when a presidency ends. However, skipping the primaries may have been a bit of a home goal in my opinion, especially in light of the rumors circulating at the time the party put forward Hillary Clinton in the Clinton versus Trump in the 2016 election. At the time, there were a lot of allegations flying about that the party Politburo had fudged the numbers, and the candidate that had won the primaries was in fact Bernie Sanders. Whatever happened, happened, and Trump is the new president, and the Kremlin is keeping an eye on the somewhat unpredictable character now taking up the role. Thank you so much for watching. As always, look beyond the headlines, advise which I should follow too, and have a lovely day. Bye bye.